I sit here looking at objects around me, and I think, what is the shape of objects? I guess to me, the shape of objects means the form they take, but I could ask myself what form even means. I guess to me, form means an outline. That would be what you see, right? But you could ask yourself, does a blind person sense shapes? Can they see shapes? Since it's the outline that defines what the shape of an object is. If I have a pencil, that pencil has a shape, a certain shape, but a blind person would be able to, well, let's assume that we have some perfectly blind person that can never, I don't know if that's a real thing, but can this so-called person even see what an object that I'm talking about, let's say a pencil, is? I guess you'd think that they at least could sense it. They can't see it, since we've assumed that they can't see it. But can they sense those shapes? Can they sense the idea of shapes? If what defines the shape of an object is simply how you view that object, then every person who is never able to view that object in the world, whether that be a blind person, whether that be somebody else who just hasn't ever seen a pencil before, the idea of a pencil is still there, is it not? And so I guess the question on whether or not what defines the shape of an object, you can't say it's an outline. So then what would it? I would still say that there's many different ways to define the shape of an object, because the shape of an object is very much an idea. It's just knowledge that defines it. What defines things, what defines ideas, that is knowledge. Knowledge defines everything, and that includes the shape of something. The very idea, the very question actually, what is the shape of an object, really boils down to what you mean by shape and what you mean by object and what you mean by all the connecting words in said question. Everything you sense in that question contributes to the definition of that whole question, how people will interpret that question. But everybody interprets each question in very different ways. Would the shape of an object be interpreted the same way as from somebody in Canada and then some person in Europe? They'd each think differently of that question because each brings different experiences to the table. And I honestly think that the shape of an object isn't really defined by one little sense, like sound, like visuals. It would have to be defined by everything, because there are people out there that may never hear what a pencil sounds like, may never see what a pencil sounds like. They may never even think about pencils. Maybe they write with pens. They may write with a lot of things. What defines what a pencil is more than just the shape. But if we were to look more closely at the shape of an object, at the idea of a shape, what exactly defines that visual sensation, or if it even is a visual sensation? Primarily, I thought it would just be knowledge that defines everything, and that includes shape. So going off of that logic, what sort of knowledge defines the shape of an object? Some people, well, let's say I have a pencil or something. What defines that pencil is basically the shape of it, or what I see from it. But even somebody who can't see can still hear that pencil, hear it from other people. If I have two people in this room and I tell that person, let's say that person can't see the pencil that I'm holding behind my back, but I tell them that I have a pencil behind my back, they still know that there's a pencil behind my back, but they can't see that pencil. As such, the idea of a pencil still exists, whether or not you see that shape before I've even told you it, or before you've actually seen that shape. So what is the shape of that object? Well, it's the idea inside your head. You have an idea of that pencil. You have the idea of its colors, of its texture, and all that is based off of your prior experiences with pencils. Now, even people who have never seen a pencil have initial thoughts about pencils. They have the initial thought of, let's say, the word. Maybe you still know English, but you've never seen a pencil in your life. You may still know the idea of a pencil. Let's say you know it's yellow. It could be yellow, it would be pointy. There's some lead on top. You know those things. You also know that it's a little bit skinny. It's not as thick as a pen. You felt what a pen feels like, and that doesn't feel like a pencil. But it might be related to the pencil in some way. A pen and a pencil are related in the fact that they both write things. They're used to write things. They're used in academics. They're used in homework. You maybe used them each in kindergarten. But let's say you never used a pencil before, you still know of all these connecting factors between a pencil and a pen. But the question is, how does that individual know what a pencil even is, know how they can connect this pen and a pencil together? Well, they must have some initial concept of a pencil, don't they? So then what would that initial concept be? Well, the initial concept of that pencil could be any sort of experience you have that relates to that word. Because in the sense of the question, what is a pencil? What is the shape of this pencil? You must know what the word, the letters combining together that make what a pencil is. You need to know that initially before you even ask a question. Otherwise, me asking that question wouldn't make any sort of sense to you. It would just be the same as asking you what guabble gloop is. You wouldn't know what a guabble gloop is because you don't know that idea. That means nothing to you. All that means is a set of syllabuses, if that's what it's even called. All those letters, all those sounds that you've heard before in your life, you interpret that as just sounds. Because gobbledygook, if that even is what the word I used before, you don't really have any concept of that. And so you don't really know what that word means. The same is true with the pencil. But if that is the case, let's say you've never seen the pencil, then I guess the form of pencil doesn't exist to you. So maybe, a pencil, the shape of the pencil, just depends on your prior experiences. Maybe the shape of a pencil doesn't exist for a person who's perfectly blind, who can never see a thing in their life. They wouldn't know what a shape of a pencil is. They only know of the word shape. They only know of the words and the ideas and the abstract ideas that those words bring up in their mind, but they can't see it. If you take away sight, the actual idea of a shape isn't there, is it? But that still feels wrong. Everybody has a concept of shape. So the question, what is the shape of an object? Certainly, there'd be an answer to that. But I would argue there's no such answer to that question. You know why? Because the only reason why I think this is an actual smart question is because I pose this question to myself, and I'm looking at the question through my own eyes and through my own subjective ideas. As such, I would argue that the shape of an object doesn't exist in the first place, because if there's people out there that can't see, and I'm sure there's people out there that don't know what a pencil is, have never heard of the pencil, then my question is stupid and it doesn't mean anything. But I would still argue that it means something. Why? Because I still have prior experiences to this question. I know what is the shape of an object. That whole question form is a question I often ask myself about a lot of things. What is a pencil? What is a computer? What is shampoo? What is a lot of things? So that question still exists. The shape is something I already know of. I know of the concept of shapes, and I know of the concept of objects. Now, putting all those three together, certainly that would mean that they exist, but for the person outside of my circle, a person of whom that I don't know of, that may never see any sort of object. It doesn't exist for them. Now, I would argue the only reason why I think a pencil exists is because I know of it. So really, the only thing that's giving existence to the shape of a pencil, to the very idea of a pencil itself, is me. I see what the pencil is. It's me who decides whether a pencil exists or not. I am the God who decides that a pencil is a pencil, or the shape of a pencil, or the outline of a pencil, whatever that pencil is, whatever the idea of a pencil is, that is all because of me. So what is the shape of an object? I don't know. I don't know.